Everyone. Welcome to another episode of Dojo Live. Today is Tuesday, September 14th, 2021. I'm Tulio Sergusa, broadcasting from Southern California, joined by Carlos Ponce in Cuernavaca, Mexico, and Kim Lantis in Hermosillo, Mexico. Hi, guys. Welcome back.
Hey.
And
It's
our
good to be
guest
here as
today
ever.
is Michael O'Neill, who is the founder and CEO at GetWell Network, and also an active member of Graybridge. Hi, welcome to the show, Michael, who's tuning in from Washington, D.C.
Hey, thanks, Tulio and Team Dojo. It's a pleasure to be here today with you.
Today, we're talking about a very important topic, something that's been a bit of a difficult conversation for at least our country for many, many years.
hmm
And that is building bridges to racial unity. Is it possible? Can we actually really ever get there? That's what we're going to talk about today, and specifically how digital connection and engagement can impact for us to have stronger communities. But before we go into that conversation, let's get to know our guest a little bit. So, Michael, please introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about you.
So my name, as you said, is Michael O'Neill. I actually live in Washington, D.C. You're actually about half a mile from the D.C. border in a town called Chevy Chase, Maryland. I grew up in New York. I'm the middle of five kids over 6.5 years. My dad was an O'Neill. My mom was an Esposito. So we had like a big, emotional, crazy circus of a Irish, Italian, Catholic family growing up in New York, kind of one for all for one. And so
You lived like 8 years of diapers nonstop. Your trash can never blew over in the windstorm. Was the
all I remember is like pouring a box of Cheerios out on the table and us just kind of scrapping for them as much as fast as we could. So it was that kind of house, but a lot of fun growing up. I went to school out at Notre Dame, so I got a taste of the Midwest. And for a Northeast boy, raced as fast as I could back to Manhattan. Worked for a bit for Donnie Deutsch, who's a very famous ad guy in New York. Learned the craft of understanding brands and markets and positioning and people and why they buy things and do things, whatever the case may be. And so it's been quite a journey.
Thanks for the introduction. As I was hearing, I was like fast forwarding, thinking my little one, this is how she's going to introduce ourselves growing up in a half Jewish, half Christian, half Italian, half Irish household. That's going to be something to unfold at that point when she grows up, right? So tell us a little bit about GetWell Network and Graybridge.
So with GetWell Network, when I was 28 years old, I was at graduate school in DC at Georgetown studying for a law and business degree, and was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma about 3 months after I was engaged. So I was putting, who is now my wife of 21 years, Wendy Eskandarian, I put her through an early test. That was, I guess, part of the objective. And so I was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is a blood cancer. And I went through a bunch of surgery and chemotherapy and a lot of kind of cancer club craziness, and came around it was in the spring, came around in the fall with a bald head and about 10 pounds lighter from my treatments, and had one more year left in grad school, and decided to spend the limited talent that I clearly have and any time that I clearly had left, if you will, on figuring out how to make it better for the next person up. I had a wonderful medical outcome, but a far less than wonderful experience from a patient and family standpoint, and decided that we felt there was both a need and an opportunity to take technology and to find a way to embed it into the healthcare process to help people take a more active role in their health journey. And that mission really became the company GetWell Network that I launched on August 1st of 2000, which I know sounds like eons and worlds and lives ago, which it is. And so 20 years later, we touch about 10 million healthcare patients a year with a portfolio of consumer engagement tools and content around the world, across the US, in the Middle East, Australia, Canada. And we help people truly take a more active role in their healthcare path and journey. And so we educate them on their meds. We help them communicate and connect with their doctors more effectively and efficiently. And we actually help these organizations providing care deliver what we call in the industry kind of patient or people-centered care. Because too often While we always say that we want to deliver patient-centered care, the patient feels on the outside looking in, and the system around us doesn't really afford for us to be able to do that. So we help organizations deliver the kind of care that their amazing clinicians were both born and trained to deliver.
Excellent. What an amazing journey. And what about Greybridge? What does the what does the
So
organization?
Greybridge actually is a nonprofit that was launched about 2 weeks after George Floyd's death in Minneapolis in May of 2020. Candidly, within a week after George Floyd's murder, myself and my 2 teenage girls were downtown at a rally here in DC. A day after that, we sat just with my 4-person family, my wife, Wendy, and my daughters, Cal and Ava, with a lot of tears and a lot of anxiety and a lot of just confusion and darkness around everything that was kind of happening in the world. We took the step to kind of reach out to a couple of our kind of dear friends of color to simply ask whether or not they'd be willing to allow us to kind of share space with them. This is the middle of a pandemic. The world was upside down, as you all know. They clearly were spending time with their family and friends and communities, but we asked for some space. That turned into a week after George Floyd's murder, turned into a every other Wednesday Zoom call for 90 minutes with 10 families. That's been now going on for 17 months. And that call began just with a group of 10 families, both parents and kids, just sharing experience, being vulnerable, talking about what we were experiencing, feeling, the world we want versus the world that we actually are living in right now, and then what might we collectively do about it. And that conversation led to an insight around human connection that we all had together, but not everybody had. If we all had these meaningful connections with people of different races, might that be a foundation to start down a path of racial unity? And what could this group of 10 families begin to do to help people kind of start down that path? And that became Greybridge.
Wow, amazing. All right, let's go right into the topic today because so much to unpack and learn from this. Let's kick it off. Kim?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Michael, for being here. So the topic as chosen by you, which I think Tulio mentioned earlier in the show, is building bridges to racial unity, how digital connection and engagement can impact racial equity and build stronger communities. So I'm going out on a limb here, taking a hunch that all of your experience with GetWellNetwork led up, I think, to a lot of how to start building this network. But with this digital connection that you're talking about and these 10 families, are you all located? My question is, are you located all in the DC area? Or is this something now that's growing or at least has the ability to grow all across the country and even the world?
Yeah, so Greybridge started with 10 families here in what we call the DMV, DC, Maryland, Virginia, kind of inside the Beltway, if you will. So families kind of close to DC. We quickly stood up a national youth board and really kind of flipped governance on its head. It was so clear from some of our children who actually are in high school and college that they want to live in a world that we have failed to create for them, one that is more inclusive, one that is more just, one that is more equitable. And so we kind of flipped governance on its head, asked them to kind of form a national youth board of actually emerging young leaders, activists, and change agents. And that happened over a 3 to 4 week period. And that national youth board that my daughter Calla serves on and helps to chair. We have students from Spelman College in Atlanta. We have students from John Jay Criminal Justice College in the Bronx. We have a great a track star down at University of North Texas. And so through our youth board, we kind of quickly kind of became, a national organization of people kind of coming together to help do something we believe could be a breakthrough approach to like the DE&I efforts that many of us have been a part of in our homes, at our work, in our school. But we actually felt like there were some real gaps in the way that DE&I was being implemented, and thought that if we actually could take a complementary grassroots, new age digital approach to diversity, equity, inclusion efforts, we thought we could accelerate the impact, of both the existing efforts and these new ones on these communities.
Michael, you launched GetWellNetwork, almost 20 years ago, right? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so and this is because we're discussing building bridges to racial unity and digital connection and engagement. My question to you would be, since inception to the present day, where do you find that it's more challenging to achieve the goals that you founded the company for back in that day, or the present time, or somewhere in between? So I'm
Mm.
just trying to understand, where both the tech part and also the social aspect part converge
Yeah.
better.
Yeah. Well, so these things actually really, it's almost been uh, this evolution that you wanted to be a revolution, right? So,
Hmm.
so
Mm.
when we first started the company, I was a 28-year-old, recently completed 6 rounds of chemotherapy. I had a bald head, but a lot of fire, and just thought that like overnight, um, who wouldn't want the healthcare experience to be different? So we were going to be able to transform the healthcare industry using technology and consumer engagement and really drive the convergence of these two things
Hmm.
into the industry. Um, I, I will tell you quite humbly, it took us 12 years to get 40 clients, and these are health systems, who actually provide care.
Mhm.
Then it took us 5 years to get 500 more. So figuring out how to have impact in these entrenched industries using technology and consumer engagement has not been an overnight success. It took a long time. So I would say that in many ways, it's actually easier today than it was back then because the barriers to embracing and implementing digital tools in these
Mhm.
entrenched industries have actually come down. In particular, the last year and a half, COVID's been, of course, so much pain, so much loss, and so much strain and stress on both consumers of health and also providers of health. However, what it has done is completely break the paradigm of hesitation and inertia in this very old, entrenched, and difficult to work in industry of healthcare and the business of healthcare. It's broken all the barriers down. You better figure out a way to adopt digital tools to help people stay safe at home, to help them be informed about what they should be doing, and to only come in when they absolutely need to, because the safest place for you to be cared for is at your home,
Mhm.
unless you actually need and absolutely need, a certain level of care that can only be provided in a hospital. And so I will tell you that it's easier today than it is in the past for those reasons. On the racial unity side, interestingly enough, a lot of this work that we do at Get Well Network has led to this moment for me and for the work we're doing now on the Gray Bridge front. Over the last year and a half at Get Well Network, we have pushed all of our chips into attacking health equities or health inequities, in particular as it pertains to access to great health, to wrapping our digital arms around underserved communities who have been left to kind of fend for themselves in the past. And so we have learned how to engage people digitally in their healthcare journey. We've now applied that to a population of mothers on Medicaid who are having their first child, and how can we actually help them navigate through, their 9 months of pregnancy? How do we actually prevent preterm labor and prevent days in NICUs, and really help, both mothers and babies stay healthy through their journey by providing the right information, by surrounding them with care navigators, by connecting with them digitally, if you will. That work has led pretty directly to this work now on the Gray Bridge front to say, hey, we know the kind of tools and platforms, we know the engagement kind of tools of the trade to kind of get people to engage. And let's go apply this into companies and into schools to really help them create communities of unity that we know they're striving for, but having a hard time kind of moving the needle on, if you will. So it's I'd say it's easier today than it was before. But man, this is a long game that we're playing. This is not this is nothing you run into, turn a switch on, and things work. This is a journey, for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's amazing. So thank you. Okay. So Kim, I think you had a
Yeah,
question.
I think you actually kind of touched on what I was asking, or going to ask rather, and kind of unifying these two themes of racial inequity and then access to healthcare, right? So you've got Graybridge and Get Well Network, which reminded me actually of a past guest who perhaps you've heard of him. I don't know, Vic Bakru, who is the COO of a company called Consejo Sano. And so what they kind of do in line, I think, with what you're doing, is help other people better understand, I think, their Medicaid and Medicare, right? Particularly like cross languages and things, and age gaps, and also, so I think it's you guys could probably make another network here.
For sure.
And we've even had conversations about that inequality in the finance world as well. So perhaps with some of the conversations you've had at Graybridge, what have you seen? What have people shared with us about the differences in perhaps the treatment that they're receiving in the medical world?
Yeah, so let me kind of share a little bit on both sides of this. So on the GetWell world, what we're being asked to do these days by large healthcare providers and payers who are responsible for large underserved populations is to, we get a panel of 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, for example, again, mothers on Medicaid, for example, right? We take this panel and we use an AI-driven conversational SMS platform that we actually have created, and we reach out to them to introduce ourselves, let them know we are here for them, and we actually hire virtual but local care navigators in market who know the neighborhoods, know the local vernacular, know where the grocery store is, know where the clinic is, whatever the case may be. And we begin to build out 360 patient profiles to understand they don't have transportation, or they live with their elderly father and they can't leave him for more than an hour and a half, or whatever the kind of things may be. When we know holistically what a person's situation actually is, what they call in the industry social determinants of health, when you reach out and talk to people and you understand what they're dealing with from both an opportunity and challenge standpoint, you can really help to begin to give them the kind of access to care they need to have the very best outcome for themselves. So on the healthcare side at GetWellNetwork, that is the work that we are doing, and we are measuring like crazy the impact on a person's satisfaction, on a person's quality and safety outcomes, on a person's access to care, kind of through these tools, if you will. And we're just seeing the engagement rates in the Latinx community of 74%, in the African-American community, 72% is actually outstripping, in the same markets, the folks we're actually serving who happen to not be people of color or in other communities that we're actually reaching out to. So we're seeing some tremendous success in understanding how to place local, high trust, knowledgeable people in market, arm them with tools, do the outreach, and pull people in. That's on the healthcare side. Mm-hmm. On the Graybridge side, it's quite a different challenge. What we studied for about 6 months with our Graybridge founding community was inside of companies and schools, what are the current diversity, equity, inclusion initiatives that are going on inside these organizations? And where are the gaps holding us back from having the accelerated impact that all of us who are living, in this troubled world want to have? And the two things we actually found were crystal clear. Number one, they're simply not going fast enough. So we talked to a university, the head of DE&I, and they would say to us, hey, listen, over 2021 and 2022, we're going to be surveying our staff, our faculty, and our students around whether or not they believe we have a community that speaks to kind of racial justice and equity. And my reaction to that is, that's wonderful you're surveying them, but the fact that that's going to happen over 18 months, our students, and the fact that they're living this world 6 times faster than we're actually like implementing the initiatives. And so we actually felt that pace was slower top down than what the grassroots people living it wanted to actually make movement on. That was the first thing. And the second thing actually was, it was a very patriarchal approach, right, to DE&I. Like, we find a workshop and we make our employees go to it for 3 hours about implicit bias or about structural racism. And these are not bad things. We are rooting for all of them. But again, we believe through our work at Graybridge and the families and our experiences that lived experience versus teaching down. So lived experience sharing, number one, as a way to drive understanding, and then it's a personal journey. So how can we actually enhance and invite people onto a personal journey of discovery, of understanding, of empathy, of action to complement these top-down approaches? And so What Graybridge was created to do was to complement these existing DE&I initiatives in companies and schools to accelerate their impact. And that's the work that we're doing, and it is hard. Very hard.
Yeah, I can imagine. Education plays a big role on both sides, right?
Yep.
It's learning what is it that you don't know, that you're not aware of, that you can't connect to,
Yep.
as someone potentially who's never experienced racial inequity, right? You
Yep.
just don't connect to it. It's like, I don't get it. Well,
Yep.
you're not going to get it just theorizing or reading a book. You're going to have to speak to people who can share with you real life experiences.
Exactly right.
And even then, you can only get to a place of sympathizing, empathizing, but you never really understand it fully because you didn't live it. So there's a big challenge, obviously, there
It-
to do that. What are you finding? And my question: how is that being? How's that gap being bridged? That
yeah.
is it
So,
clear? I mean, that to me, that seems to be the bigger gap. Educating what is available to you if you're of color or if you're a minority, et cetera, right? It's educating you to be able to.
and we at Graybridge would never pretend for a second that we are going to take on the vastness and complexity of the entire issue of racial justice and equity. I say that to tell you that there are the component and the layer that we are taking on is very clear. And that is, our thesis is, if we can help you create a meaningful connection with a person of a different race, that meaningful connection will be a spark that leads to more understanding, more empathy, and more positive action in your community. So the first thing I would tell you is, this is the slice of this really complicated, or this piece of the really complicated puzzle that we believe we can have a big impact on. Now, I say that to kind of say, when it comes to the education, the content that we have on our app, we are moving aggressively towards exclusively lived experience content. Not because we don't think that people need to ultimately understand the past and the complexities of structural racism and implicit bias, and things like this. But that's not what we're going to take on. What we're going to take on is, we're going to teach you about those issues, but we're going to do it through the lens of lived experience, so that we don't get caught up in the argument, the inertia of what exactly should be taught. It's not that we don't care, but for our purposes, we just want to make sure that me as a 50-year-old on a white male, let me spend some time listening to and hearing from the lived experience of people that don't look like me, who have very different backgrounds. Number one. Number two, with that common understanding that we are now going to have through these initial kind of, we call them discover modules. Now we're actually going to challenge you. We have these 3 connect challenges and we have a pilot going on in the fall, about 1,000 people across 10 organizations. So you've just completed these 6 discover modules, and now I'm actually going to give you 3 connect challenges. I'm going to challenge you to connect with people that don't look like you. And I'm going to do it something that seems very simple. One of the challenges is a recipe swap. So I'm Irish and Italian. I'm actually going to share with somebody who's Indian, or somebody who's African American, or someone who's Jewish, or whatever the thing may be. I'm going to share with you a recipe that we make at home and why it's important to me and my family. And you're going to do the same. And through that, we're going to tell stories about a family and who makes this. And my grandmother taught me this. And here's her recipe for sauce. And here's why she actually puts the sugar into it first, or whatever the thing may be. I'm going to snap a photo. I'm going to upload this to kind of earn points. So I'm becoming a Graybridge builder by completing my discover modules, by taking on my connect challenges, and then taking on an impact mission in my community. And the idea of this, and where the engagement in digital comes in, is we believe the combination of these new age engagement tools and this gamification. So I'm doing these modules, I'm earning points, and I can become a Graybridge builder, and I can get this cool gear when I'm actually done.
Love it. You give away the secret to what makes a great Sicilian sauce. Sugar. That's the secret recipe to making a great sauce, adding sugar into it.
I love this. This reminds me of a dynamic that I experienced about 20 years ago. I happened to be in Kenya, actually, and we were in a small group, and we were talking about the Bible verse that I think almost everyone knows, whether you're of the Christian faith or not. And that's for truly I tell you, if you have the faith the size of a mustard seed, you can say to that mountain, move from here to there, and that mountain will move, right? And so as we were visualizing this, one of the leaders put a pile of mustard seeds in another person's hand, and they're like, spread the seed. And so this was on one side of the room, and then the other side of the room, they did the same thing, but added a different tip. And so on the one side, this person is taking a single seed, kind of struggling to get a hold of it, and hand to hand to hand. And on the other side, what he did was, here are your seeds, here are your seeds, here are your seeds. And then suddenly you've got 5, 6, 7, 8 people all passing out seeds.
Yeah.
And clearly that half of the room, everyone had their seed much faster. And so this is what I see Graybridge is doing with this personal connection. Like, let me share my story, and now here's these stories, and here's these stories. And instead of just having this, like you mentioned earlier, this top down saying this is the history, this is the way it needs to be done. Now we're taking this entire foundation and I think moving upward. And to me, that is absolutely innovative. Kudos for that. And to all the people in your network, I'm actually going to be checking it out myself to help spread that fire. It's absolutely fantastic.
Cool.
We all need that.
I'm blown away by the experiential learning experience that you guys are offering. And I can't help to think how antiquated our entire educational system is, based on repetition. All we learn is repetition. I wonder how much more that experiential learning, if we brought that into the schools, could expand so much more beyond just even the racial inequity. I mean, you guys have cracked the code on something that is phenomenal. That's the best way people learn.
Tulio, it's so fun. I have, I know everyone thinks this about their children, but I have this remarkable 18-year-old daughter who finished her freshman year in high school at the very top of her class and decided to leave that school and go to a new age startup school that by design was fully integrated, global in its approach, and experiential. You know, knowing full well that it may ruin her chances to get into some colleges that would take the traditional. She doesn't even have grades, right? But to watch she and her cohort of kids who took the leap to do this for 3 years. She's a senior now at the school in DC. To watch the way they think about world issues, the way they collaborate with actually others, both in the school and outside the school. Like, I think you're dead on. I think this experiential learning and its integrated approach, memorizing the order of the wars that happened 3 millennials ago, I can do this in 3 seconds here. I can literally punch it in. I don't need to learn this anymore. I can find it in 3 seconds. The question for our day really is, how do people actually collaborate and problem solve, together? How do people welcome in new ideas, be able to constantly share theirs, but be open to others? Like, these are the things that have to happen for us to be able to move the world forward. And I couldn't agree with you more. I think there's an experiential learning, a project-based learning, curriculum and framework, that needs to more and more be embedded into how we teach young people. Anyway, and that's certainly what we've embraced, in the Graybridge journey for sure.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, want to teach people emotional intelligence. This is the way.
No kidding.
This is absolutely the way. We're running out of time. We could go on for hours and talk about this. But before we wrap up, what's this journey been like for you and the people involved, beginning with this about almost a year ago, a little over a year ago? What have been the hurdles and challenges and things you've learned even about yourself going through this?
So I think the first thing is profoundly personal, and that is, through my cancer experience, we spend most of our time and energy moving towards light and bringing light. And I had posted a WhatsApp message to a group of CEOs who I do a bunch of work with here in the DMV a couple of days after George Floyd's death, that candidly was very biting. It was like, hey, why the heck are we talking about PPP loans? Like, why the hell aren't we doing something, about this right now? And my wife caught me and said, Michael, you spend all of your energy with constructive change. So you better figure out whatever you need to do to take a step back. Like, you lashing out at people for not doing something is not the answer. Like, let's take a step back and figure out how you want to channel, this into something constructive. And so I guess the most profound thing that I learned is that there are so many people who actually are willing to take another job on top of the job to create change. You have to be vulnerable enough and open enough, to kind of take a risk, invite them in, admit that you don't know everything, but you want to actually be a part of something. You don't need to actually lead it. You want to be a part of it. And so I learned a lot about making sure that when I'm feeling pain, man, like there's no better catalyst for bringing light when the pain is the deepest. And it's been a pretty amazing run like that. The only other thing I say, not to be too long-winded, is we also have found, people throw this notion of like, oh yeah, this group of friends, they're family. People throw the word family around lightly. Where I'm from and the way I grew up, we don't, but this is the Gray Bridge family now. And I have a Get Well family. And I've got an O'Neill family. And like this actually defines my life, and like where I get my most energy from is kind of people coming together, rooting for each other and driving impact, not in a day, but like over a sustained amount of time, because that's what it takes to tackle the hard stuff. Big change comes from a series of a lot of small changes. And so you have to be willing to kind of want to stay with it. And I've learned a lot about that through this. And I'm so blessed and grateful for the people who said yes, who I reached out to with tears in my eyes, with my lips shaking, in a very vulnerable, awkward spot in my life, a year and a half ago. And the fact that Daphne and Hartley and Tony and Stephen Baldy, and they said yes, I'll be forever grateful.
Michael, it's been great to have you with us as a guest. It's been an honor to have you. We wish you a lot of success. We'll definitely have to keep up with the progress that you make. And yes, it is a long tail game and a lot of perseverance and a lot of iterations. Dojo Live, we've been in existence for 6 years now, but over 2/3 of our guests only happened in the past couple of years. So it just goes to show how things accelerate once you start to sort of crack the code a little bit. And this guy over here, he's the guy who had the foresight to think about making it happen. I'm trying to do the Brady Bunch thing. It's not
the
working.
Brady Bunch.
So, Carlos, speaking of the devil, Carlos, hey, tell us what's coming up for the rest of the week. What do we got coming up?
Of course. We have tomorrow, we have Squat Locker, and this is with its founder and CEO, Gary Goldberg, to talk about disrupting youth sports through tech. That's tomorrow. And then on Thursday, the conversation will be with ProQuo AI with its CTO and head of growth, Pete Harvey. These are two people, two guests, Pete Harvey and Sirsha Sadek, I hope I pronounced it correctly, respectively, CTO, head of growth. And the topic, building a fearless team from scratch. So that's what we have for this week, folks. So stay tuned right here on Dojo Live. Excuse me. And of course, thank you guys. And thanks, Michael, for having been with us today.
Very
Please,
much
Michael.
so.
Yeah. And please, Michael, stay with us as we go off the air. And other than that, thanks, everyone. And stay safe.
See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.